What's up everybody, Ben from Living Survival, and today we're going to take a look at a new alcohol stove that I purchased. This is the White Box stove. We're going to compare it to another alcohol stove that I have and talk a little bit about using stoves in the wintertime. So today we're going to be talking about this little guy. It's an aluminum alcohol stove from White Box Stove Company. I purchased this with their windscreen and I wanted to try it out. It's an ultralight solution for backpacking, not only in the summer months but in the winter months as well. Now in the summer, as you know, I mainly use wood stoves unless I'm going ultralight, and when I'm going ultralight I'm typically just taking dehydrated meals, so all I have to do is warm up some water for those meals, and an alcohol stove works great for that. These work on denatured alcohol. They also will work on heat, which you can pick up pretty much at any gas station. So there's several versions of this. We've looked at the Evernew version, which I'm going to be comparing this to today, but there's also the Trangia burners out there which people use. The difference here is that you can set your pot directly on it. Now on the Evernew version you do need the pot stands, which I have, which make it a little bit more expensive. This one you can simply just set your pot right on top, and as you can see, really all this is just like an aluminum beer bottle that's been cut in half, flipped upside down, edges have been rolled, some holes have been cut here, and the paint's been scraped off. So I mean, you know, you probably could do this yourself. There's Fancy Feast stoves out there that people make that you can do yourself for relatively inexpensive, but for $23 you get the stove and you get a windscreen. So you know, pretty good deal if you're not into doing it yourself. Now why an alcohol stove? Again, in the summer and winter, you know, it makes for pretty much the lightest weight option you can have. Now winter camping, where you're going to need water for dehydrated meals or water to drink, you have a few options. One, obviously you can purify the water if the temperature isn't too low, but your filters become pretty ineffective and you really don't want to use them in a freezing situation. So most people in an area where you get snow like we do in Michigan, you're going to boil up snow for your drinks and for your meals. Now an alcohol stove really isn't meant to boil large quantities of water. For that I would use a white gas stove. You could use the isobutane stoves like the Jetboil or the Pocket Rocket with the little canisters, but I find that those don't work that great in really cold temps. You have to have a full canister. Once they get you know, half full or less, they start to not work as well. And again, when you're melting snow, you're using an incredible amount of fuel. So for melting snow, I'm going to either use a white gas stove like my MSR Universal, or I'm going to simply just put a pot over the fire. I'm typically going to have a fire in the winter time anyway, but where this comes in would be to just boil up you know, a quick couple of cups of water for that dehydrated meal, or to warm some water up for some coffee or tea in a very lightweight and inexpensive package. Looking closer here, you can see it's just the top of one of those aluminum bottles flipped upside down. There's some slits in it so the alcohol can seep into the sides here, and then it would plume out these holes on the edges. It is really nicely finished. You've got a nice rolled edge here, and it is quite durable even for being aluminum. You know, I really can't crush that with my hand. If I were to stomp on it I could probably bend it, but it is quite durable for being aluminum. And again, it comes in lighter than my titanium stove. This one is 1 ounce versus almost 2 ounces for the Evernew. So those that are counting grams, especially when ultralight backpacking, you know, this may be a super light option you may want to consider. Alcohol stoves can be fairly picky sometimes. Sometimes you have to apply a little bit of the alcohol to the jets. I have 2 ounces of denatured alcohol in there. I'm going to go ahead and just light it up. And just like that, we are lit. Now instead of throwing my pot right on there, I am going to wait for a few minutes here until it blooms, or essentially I start seeing you know, flame come out the jets there. Otherwise you run the risk of simply just putting it out before it has a chance to prime. So I'm going to go ahead and let this go till it blooms. I'm going to set my pot on there, start the timer, and we'll see how long it takes to boil 2 cups of water. So about a minute and a half in, you can see the alcohol is starting to heat up there. You can sort of hear those jets start to fire. So I'm gonna go ahead and set my pot on. You can see it there. I'm not sure if you can see it in the camera. All right, so right at the 7.5 minute mark, I'm starting to see steam come out, so I'm pretty sure we are boiling. And yes, we are boiling, so just over 7 minutes, not bad. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the same thing with the Evernew stove. Now, as you can see, there is markings on the inside, which is nice. So I'm gonna fill that up to the 2 ounce mark. So I've got this stove going, gonna put on the crossbars here and wait a minute or two for it to bloom. I've got a fresh 2 cups of water in here. I let the pot cool down. Of course, it's titanium, so it cooled right down, and poured 2 cups of the same cold water in there. So it looks like we are already starting to bloom on the Evernew. Let's get this windshield in place here. All right, so it took about a minute on this one as well, 1.5 minutes. I'm gonna go ahead and set my water on here and start our timer. So right about at the 9 minute mark here, I'm starting to see some steam here. And yes, we do have a boil. So 1.5 minutes longer than the white box stove. So what's the verdict on the white box alcohol stove? Well, I like it. There's a lot of things to like about it. It did boil 2 cups of water quicker than on my Evernew titanium alcohol stove by about 1.5 minutes. That being said, the Evernew did run out or run off for quite a bit longer. It took about 3 or 4 minutes to burn through that 2 ounces of alcohol after I took the boiling water off. So what does that mean? It means that the white box stove probably burns a little bit hotter. It's going to get your 2 cups of water to boil quicker than the other stove, but you're going to use more fuel doing it by about maybe 1/2 ounce. So if that matters to you, that might be something to consider. So the results, in my opinion, are pretty negligible. You know, conditions are going to vary. It's 30 degrees out here today, so it's fairly cold, snow on the ground. Now, I did use a windscreen for both. You definitely want to use some sort of windscreen for both, but you know, you're looking at 1.5 minutes more for the titanium stove, but at a cost of maybe you know, 1/2 ounce more worth of alcohol. So again, you know, this isn't some super scientific test. It's real world conditions, and you know, I'm sure the mileage is going to vary a little bit between the 2 stoves, but for you know, the money, you're paying $23 for this stove plus the windscreen, and I believe that does include shipping as well, to get the Evernew model with the crossbars, which you need unless you have something, you know, else to set it down into, some other type of stove, which is going to cost you money as well, and space in your pack. You're looking about $45 for that Evernew setup. So this is going to go in my kit. This is going to go on my winter backpacking trips with me. Now that being said, I mentioned earlier that this is just for a quick boil. You know, this is just to get your hot chocolate or your coffee you know, warmed up. This is to get your dehydrated meal hydrated again. In the wintertime, in order to have fresh water, you are going to have to melt snow, and something like this just does not have the power and longevity to do it. You would just go through too much fuel to try to do it. So using a white gas stove or putting your pot right on an open fire, which many of us have in the wintertime, is going to be a much better option for melting that snow. I'm going to leave a link below to white box stoves where you guys can check out more information as well as pick one up if you'd like to do so. I hope you guys enjoyed the video today. Please give it a big thumbs up for me. Make sure you leave me that comment below in the comment section. Also, make sure you share it to anybody who might be interested on your social media, especially with the holidays coming up. If you haven't already done so, take a second and click that subscribe button for me and that notification bell so you'll be notified of new videos.